Alright guys, we have made it to game week 3. We are back for our championship score predictions ahead of the weekend. If you're not already, you can go ahead and check out the Patreon link in the description down below, where we are running a competition where we see who is the best at predicting championship results this season. Not gonna lie, I didn't have the best of weeks in game week 2. Game week 1, I was really quite strong. Last week though was very hit and miss for me. So I'm hoping to pull it back this weekend. Do drop your score predictions in the comments down below. How do you see all of these games going? But without any further ado, let's just jump in. So starting out on Friday night for Derby up against Bristol City. Derby still looking for their first points of this season, and this is not the sort of match you probably want to be going into on the back of back-to-back losses against a very well set up Bristol City side who haven't tended to give that much away to the opposition under Gerhard Struber. Over the weekend was probably a bit of a frustrating result. They struggled to break down Charlton, but the way that Derby have set up defensively, you just feel like Bristol City will get a bit more joy in the final third out of this one. Derby currently boasting the worst defensive record in the Championship. Over the first 2 game weeks, only Sheffield Wednesday and Wrexham have faced a higher XG than Derby have, which is very untypical of a John Eustace side. Obviously, they are working with quite a few injuries at the moment, which is worth considering, and that's one of the factors why I'm not really that concerned about this slow start. I get that it's really frustrating, but I still back them to come good eventually. But with that being said, I think Bristol City are the obvious favourites coming into this one. You see what they did against a dishevelled Sheffield United backline on the opening day of the season, put 4 goals past them. They're going to have Emile Reece causing all sorts of problems for that Derby backline in this one. Someone like Scott Twine who can be so deadly from dead ball situations, and that's where Derby have looked quite vulnerable at times from defending those set pieces. So I think Derby will come good eventually. I'm just not sure that it happens on Friday. Score prediction, I'm going to go for a Bristol City win on the road. 2-1 Bristol City, I'm saying for that one. Next up to the Valley for Charlton up against Leicester, the first of the Saturday 12:30 kickoffs. Now, we mentioned this in last week's preview when Preston were playing Leicester. I think this is a really good time to be playing Leicester. I think that later on in the season, we may see them clicking into gear when Marty Cifuentes has a more settled squad to work with, but there's just so much change going on in that dressing room at the moment. How many players are likely to leave between now and the end of the window, and how many players probably aren't fully committed to playing for Leicester right now. And I think that was on show over the weekend when Leicester travelled to Deepdale. Going away to a side like Charlton is no easy task. Charlton, who have kept back-to-back clean sheets in the Championship, haven't given a lot to weight to the opposition in these opening 2 matches. Only Swansea and Middlesbrough have faced a lower XG than Charlton have so far. So they've done a really good job at limiting the opposition to quite a few chances in these opening matches. And you do fancy them to nick a goal from somewhere in this sort of game, especially with how fragile Leicester have looked defensively in their 2 opening games at points against Preston and Sheffield Wednesday. Quality-wise, of course, someone could step up for Leicester in this one and win the game by themselves. Someone like a Mavididi if he's on it. Jeremy Monga, who was obviously fantastic in the second half against North End last weekend. But mentally, I just feel like a lot of that Leicester squad isn't there at the moment, and a lot of those players think they're going to be moving between now and the end of the window. So Charlton will be quite switched on in this game, but there's still just the question of how many match-winning players Leicester have. Score prediction for me, I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw between those two. Think it'll be tight. Next up, we go to Hull up against Blackburn. Hull have had a really positive start to this season. A good point away on opening day against Coventry, followed up by a bonkers 3-2 win on Sunday against Oxford. We don't quite know what to expect from that backline week to week. Obviously, they had that crazy 3-3 draw with Wrexham in the EFL Cup to add into the equation as well. But generally speaking, it's been a really good start for Hull, especially with how many new players they're embedding into that squad at the moment. Been a really positive start for Ollie McBurney, who's looked like a real handful for Championship defences. And they're going up against a Blackburn side here who, while they've got no points on the board after their opening 2 matches, I don't think they've been that bad in their opening 2. West Brom, there wasn't a great deal of quality in that game. Ended up losing it 1-0 against Birmingham. Up until about the 80th minute, they seemed like the most likely side to go on and win that game, but ended up conceding 2 late goals. So I think Blackburn have been a bit of a tough one to put your finger on in these opening couple of matches. I just think that maybe with Hull having home advantage, that crowd behind them and a few more options going forward at the moment, I'm just fancying them for I'm going to go with 2-1 home victory in that game. And then the last early kickoff we've got on Saturday sees Swansea going up against Watford. I do fancy this one to be quite tight and fairly low scoring. Swansea defensively have been a really sharp looking outfit during this season so far. Barely gave anything away on the opening day against Middlesbrough, but ended up losing that 1-0 thanks to a set piece goal going against them. And against Sheffield United, they didn't really give them any sort of sniff in that game. Statistically, they've been the second tightest defence in the Championship in these opening 2 matches, having only conceded an XG of 0.9 goals. I think they'll make it quite tough for Watford, especially a Watford side that are going to be badly missing Imran Louza after his red card over the weekend. He's such an integral part of how they build up the play. And I think his absence really could be felt in a game like this that for me probably will be won or lost in the midfield. Now Watford do have those dynamic options down either flank who absolutely could cause Swansea some problems in this game. And what's going to be important from a Watford perspective is that Luka Kermangard isn't isolated in the final third like he was a little bit against Charlton, because I think he's the sort of big physical profile that you want to get players as close to him as possible. With Louza being suspended for Watford though, I just think I'm giving the edge to Swansea in this game. Score prediction, going to go marginal, going to go 1-0 Swansea in that game. Next up to the Saturday 3 PM kickoffs, we're going to St Andrews for Birmingham up against Oxford. It's the return of Gary Rowett going back to his former stomping ground. Oxford still looking for their first points of the season. Sunday was a real frustrating one, wasn't it? Got back into that game against Hull, back at 2-2. Looked like it was fizzling out to a draw, and then Hull go on and win it in the last minute. So back-to-back losses for Oxford, but still some optimism from those opening 2 matches. We've pointed out on a number of occasions that Oxford's weakness this season is probably going to be chance creation and scoring goals, but so far this season only 4 clubs in the Championship have taken more shots than Oxford have in these opening 2 matches. So they'll try and throw a bit at Birmingham this game, I'm sure, but from a Blues perspective, I fancy them to be really strong at home this season. I don't think we've seen anywhere near what they're capable of in these opening 2 matches. That season opener against Ipswich was just a bit bitty and scrappy, and then the game against Blackburn was a bit of a low quality encounter, all things considered, but obviously Blues end up winning it quite late on. You'd fancy Gary Rowett to set Oxford up quite defensively for this game and make it a really tough game for Birmingham, and maybe they can snatch a goal from a set piece, a counter, something like that. And if Oxford score first in this game, it would make things interesting. I just think Blues probably get the job done here though. Score prediction for me, I'm going to go 2-0 Birmingham in that game. Next up we go to Coventry up against QPR. Much more like it from Cov over the weekend against Derby from an attacking perspective, putting 5 goals past them. 5 different goal scorers as well was a really pleasing thing to see from a Coventry perspective. And they'll probably fancy their chances of getting a few goals in this game against a QPR backline that has looked a bit fragile in these opening 2 matches. QPR's performance levels have been really varying in half to half of their opening 2 games. Like, first half against Preston, I thought they were pretty good. Second half, thought they were pretty poor, and then that flipped against Watford. First half I thought they were really poor against Watford, but second half they gave a decent account of themselves. So I just want to see a consistent 90-minute performance from this QPR side, but does feel like they are a bit of a working project under Julian Stefan. They're still getting players in, players settled into the squad as well. It's going to take a little bit of time for that new forward line to all click into gear with one another, and maybe the balance hasn't quite been struck as of yet between attack and defence. For that reason, I am fancying Coventry for another 3 points in this one, I think. Score prediction for me, I'm going to go 3-1 Cov, but QPR could get a couple goals in that. I feel like there's goals in that for both sides, but 3-1 Cov I'm going. Next up to Carrow Road for Norwich up against Middlesbrough. I'm quite excited to see how these 2 sides set up against each other. Norwich with a really good win over the weekend away at Portsmouth. That was quite typically a really tough place to go to last season as well. Back now at Carrow Road against a tough nut to crack in Middlesbrough, who have made a really good start to this season. Back-to-back wins for Rob Edwards' side when quite a few people were expecting them to start this season quite slowly. On paper they've had a really tough start, but have come through those opening 2 fixtures unscathed really. Back-to-back clean sheets, probably the most impressive thing from a Middlesbrough perspective as well. Don't get me wrong, Millwall had chances to score against Borough. I think it was Ayling, who cleared a shot off the line in the first half, and Coburn hit the post twice for Millwall in that second half. But generally speaking, a lot more positivity about Borough. Certainly keeping hold of Hayden Hackney and how influential he could actually be in a match like this. From a Norwich perspective, still lots to like about their forward line, in my opinion. They obviously scored 2 quite quick-fire goals against Pompey last weekend. I do still think defensively, though, Norwich are gettable. It's pretty much a completely new back three that Liam Manning's working with at the moment, so that's going to take a bit of time before those players get a bit of cohesion and chemistry between them. And against Pompey, they did give up some pretty big opportunities, which a side like Middlesbrough could definitely take in this one. Score prediction for me, I fancy a few goals at each end. I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw in that one. Fancy a few goals in that one. Next up, we go to Deepdale for Preston up against Ipswich. I think at the start of the season, Ipswich were probably looking at this fixture as, you know, one to definitely target all 3 points, but maybe this is a bit more tricky, or it's going to be a bit more tricky for the Tractor Boys than they initially expected, with Preston picking up 4 points in their opening 2 matches. A really good win against Leicester over the weekend as well. Really high energy performance from Heckingbottom's side, and it certainly wasn't a smash and grab sort of performance either. We created numerous chances in that game and really put Leicester on the back foot on a number of occasions. And I do fancy us to give Ipswich a good run for their money in this one. Let's not forget that since Paul Heckingbottom came in as Preston boss, North End have only lost 3 of our last 23 home matches, so been a real tough nut to crack at Deepdale. But if any side's got the attacking quality to break someone down in the Championship, Ipswich are definitely that side. I know that they've not been free scoring in the Championship so far. Their first 2 games have both ended level, 1-1, but it does feel like with how much quality can be out on the pitch at one point for Ipswich, it's only going to be a matter of time before the penny does click for them. Obviously, they're coming off the back of a draw against Southampton over the weekend. Thought Ipswich were the better side in that game. If any team was going to go on and win that game in the second half, I think it was always going to be Ipswich. It just didn't quite fall for them in the end. This will be a tougher test than Leicester was, I think, for Preston. I do think there's more about Ipswich. Defensively, I think they're better set up as well. So from that aspect, we're really going to have to take our chances when they come. It's a tough one, really, because I do think that it's probably better to get this sort of game out of the way sooner rather than later against the parachute teams that haven't quite fully clicked into gear yet. I'm going to say North End can hold out for a point here, though. Score prediction, I'm going to go for a 1-1er between those two. 3 consecutive 1-1 draws for Ipswich, that would be. Next up to Bramall for Sheffield United up against Millwall. It's been a pretty disastrous start to the season for Sheffield United, and the fixture list does not ease up. They've got this game against Millwall this weekend, followed by back-to-back away matches away at Middlesbrough and Ipswich. So lose this game, there's a very real scenario where we're looking at a Sheff United side that's lost the first 5 games of the season, which would be an absolutely tragic start for Ruben Sellers. Obviously, defensively, they're still looking really vulnerable. They're working on bringing in more targets this week, but until that position is fixed, I think the whole balance of that squad is completely thrown out. And Millwall will have the chance to take advantage of that. I know they're coming off the back of a 3-0 defeat against Borough last time, but I wouldn't read loads into that. First half, Millwall had some very good chances to take the lead in that game, and had they gone 1-0 up, the outcome of that game could have been totally different. Also worth mentioning that under Alex Neil, Millwall have a really good away record. Under Alex Neil, Millwall have averaged 1.5 points per game in away matches, and also worth remembering, they did a job on Sheffield United at Bramall Lane towards the back end of last season, won 1-0 if you recall. Bit of injury news for Millwall coming into this one. Alfie Doherty will be missing, maybe for the foreseeable future, after he went off with an injury in that latest game against Middlesbrough, which will be a blow. They definitely lose a chunk of creativity with his absence, but the way the Blades have been playing of late, score prediction for me, a draw wouldn't surprise me, but I'm just edging it to Millwall, you know. I'm going to go 1-0 Millwall on the road in that game. Next up to St Mary's for Southampton up against Stoke. I think it's pretty tough to get a real gauge on where this Southampton squad is at the moment, because their first 2 games have been against a newly promoted Wrexham side who are still patching their squad together, and then they obviously travelled away to Ipswich over the weekend and got a point there. So 2 quite contrasting sides that they faced so far this season, and now they're thrown into the mix mix against a Stoke squad who started the season like lightning in a bottle. Back-to-back wins for the Potters at the start of the season. I think they've been a lot of fun going forward. That's been one of the criticisms we've thrown at Stoke in recent years. There's not been enough creativity or firepower in their ranks, but going off their first 2 matches, they've got that in a plenty at the moment. Sorba Thomas and Manhoef on either of the flanks offer quite a bit. Mbama's made a really good start to life out on loan with Stoke as well. While it has been a really good start to the season for Stoke, I think these next few matches are going to be the real test for them for where we can properly gauge where their level's at the moment. The next 3 games for Stoke are against Southampton, West Brom and Birmingham. So 3 sides who we all expect to be in and amongst the playoff mix this season. And if Stoke can come through these next 3 matches with a reasonable amount of points and still put up good performances, they could be here to be taken seriously this season. Southampton at home, you do expect to create quite a few chances. I mean, against Wrexham, it was really one-way traffic for all of that second half, wasn't it? For that reason, I fancy Victor Johansson for Stoke to be kept quite busy all afternoon in this one. Southampton aren't the finished product yet. I just back them at home maybe to just about get the job done here. Score prediction, I'm going to go 2-1 Southampton, but I'd fancy Stoke to make that a good game. After that, we go to the Hawthorns for West Brom up against Portsmouth. A brilliant start to the season for Ryan Mason. Back-to-back wins, one of only 3 sides who have won both matches so far this season. They came through that test against Blackburn on the opening day and then that goal fest against Wrexham on Saturday lunchtime. This will be an interesting test against a Pompey side who have caught my eye so far this season. They lost last weekend against Norwich, but maybe were a little bit unfortunate to do so. Really pushed in the second half for that equaliser, and on another day could have easily got back into that game with the chances they had, the penalty they missed as well, let's not forget. Segicic has looked like a real live wire during those opening 2 matches, and I could see him causing West Brom a few problems in this one. But with that being said, West Brom are just so strong at the Hawthorns, aren't they? Last season at home, they only lost 4 home matches all season. Portsmouth could definitely nick something here. They've got that firepower in them. I just think West Brom defensively are a little bit more sturdy at the moment. Score prediction for me, I'm going to go for another 2-1 here. 2-1 West Brom in that game. And then we're wrapping up this weekend at the racecourse for Wrexham against Sheffield Wednesday. 2 sides looking for their first points of the season. So at least one of these sides will get on the board here. Now, it's interesting actually because Wrexham and Sheffield Wednesday are the 2 sides who have faced more shots in the opening 2 weeks of this championship season than any other side. So expect goal-mouth action in this one. You'd expect Wrexham to have more of the ball and more of the chances with their extra quality, them being the home side as well. But don't count against Sheffield Wednesday springing a few counter-attacks and putting Wrexham under the cosh at different points of this match, because that Wrexham back line has looked very gettable, albeit they've faced 2 quite tough sides so far in Southampton and West Brom. Unfortunately for Wrexham, there will be no Josh Windass for this game. He has been ruled out with that injury he picked up last week, but they got Nathan Broadhead to bring into the frame, so it's not as if they're struggling for quality forwards in that squad. It does feel like a decent opportunity for Wrexham to get off the mark. I'm sure Piers Charles will be kept busy between the sticks for Sheffield Wednesday. I do fancy them to get a goal. I just think Wrexham will have a bit more about them. Score prediction, I'm going to go 3-1 Wrexham in that game. But there you guys have it. That will now wrap it up for today's video. Thank you very much for tuning in. Make sure to drop your score predictions in the comments down below. How do you see all of these matches unfolding this weekend? It's an interesting fixture list. Other than that though guys, thank you very much for tuning in. Drop a like if you want to enjoy, and I'll catch you all in the next one.